Hey guys, Dr. Pete here. Today we want to talk about how you manage difficult conversations, and a planning approach for success. If we start by defining what we're talking about with a difficult conversation is any interaction where you may feel apprehensive or avoidant and or uncertain or unclear about the outcomes that you seek. As you know, we work a lot in school settings, and so there's lots of types of difficult conversation scenarios. Teachers with students, teachers with parents, teachers with their colleagues, their peers, school leaders talking to teachers and support staff, school leaders talking to parents, the list goes on. And these conversations, again, they're all different, but typically they're about performance, behavior, well-being, attendance, or even communication itself and how people communicate together. Look, when we think about how you're going to manage difficult conversations, we look at it as a two-step approach. Step one, you need to develop a plan about it. Take the time to stop and really think through. And then step two, you need to think about the nuances of the relationship itself and optimize your approach when you're going to speak with the other person. And you'll note, as you can see on the slide on the screen right now, there's a big prerequisite here. We're not covering stress management and basic communication. We think you already know that. So we're assuming you're already good at looking after yourself and your stress reaction, and that you're already really good with the basics of communication. So let's get into part one now. Now, the first thing we need to consider is why develop a plan? And you can see the quote on the screen, Benjamin Franklin, failing to plan is planning to fail. And that's true, particularly something like a difficult conversation. Taking the time to properly think through and plan ahead is priceless. And the goal, of course, in developing a plan is so that you're able to have an objective, a balanced perspective on not only the issue of concern, but also what the possible solutions may be. Look, there's a really cool tool called the SBAR tool that you can use as a bit of a planning tool to prepare for a difficult conversation. S stands for situation, B for background, A for assessment, R for recommendation, SBAR. And when we're using the SBAR tool, we're applying that onto the other person or people in the situation, as well as ourselves, trying to think through all the different perspectives. To do that, let's take a look at a case study now. You can see on the screen here, it's a peer relationship conflict. And the character here is Simon, and he works with you in your teaching team. And Simon's really negative most of the time. He often loudly complains in the staff room, doesn't raise issues during appropriate times in team meetings, but then complains afterwards that such meetings are a waste of time, and he backstabs the leadership team. You find this disrespectful and annoying, but you don't want to call him on his behavior towards others, as he quickly becomes aggressive and hostile, and after all, he's in your team. The situation reaches breaking point after he corners you in the staff room, complaining bitterly about your line manager, who overhears the dialogue and later accuses you of disrespect. That was really disrespectful. You need to find a way to stop him from making such disrespectful statements in your presence. You need to have a difficult conversation. That's a really good illustration of a difficult conversation, okay? It's tricky. He's in your team. How do we deal with all of that? How are we going to find a way through? So let's apply the SBAR to this situation now. What you can see on the screen now is a quick summary of an SBAR as it might relate to the situation from Simon's perspective. The situation itself, of course, is, well, there was no problem for Simon. The problem was that it was misappropriated onto you, and you then got in trouble with management. The background there might be that Simon's aggressive and he's openly rude to others at times, and he doesn't seem to be fazed by conflict and confrontation. Your assessment from their perspective is he might need to just stop being openly rude to others and be prepared to respond appropriately to signals to stop. And the recommendation, if you're trying to think about how you might say something like that, it might be, Simon, I need you to not involve me in future and not be offended if I tell you to stop or if I get up and walk away. Now, doing the SBAR but only focusing on Simon's side of it is typically what happens and typically why it goes wrong. To use this properly and to prepare for a difficult conversation properly, we need to use this same SBAR on ourselves. Let's take a look on the screen now about how that plays out. When we look at the scenario through the SBAR and this time think about ourselves, well, the situation was simply that I continued to stay in a conversation with Simon, which was not appropriate. That's on me. The background of that is I avoid conflict and I worry about what others think of me and what he'll think of me if I disagree. The assessment might be, hey, I need to be prepared to tell him to stop or walk away, and I need to tolerate the discomfort that I might feel if he rejects me and gets upset with me. And the recommendation perhaps for myself in this one is, hey, I need to manage my own discomfort about being assertive, and I do need to give feedback, and I do need to take further action or seek support if I need to. And now we've got a balanced perspective with this SBAR. We've got a, hey, this is as I see it for Simon, and hey, this is as I see it for me. And that then brings us through to the last part of the planning process in step 1, and that is practicing speaking out loud how this might play out. Again, on the screen, we've got some guided cues for you here so you can see how this would work. The first sentence might be about, hey Simon, the situation I'm concerned about is when I ... after you ... and this happened on a background of me, putting yourself first, having this when you do that. The second sentence we get people to practice is, the way I assess the situation now is that and it would have been better if I, and you, and I'd recommend that next time I do this and you do that. And then step 3, tell me more about what you think of this as a solution going forwards. You'll see as we put those prompts up on the screen, the S, B, A, and R all playing out, and you'll see the empathy or the balanced perspective that we're trying to create in sharing or unpacking a difficult conversation. We've got a second scenario that's going to pop up on the screen now. Similar kind of peer-teacher conflict, this time completely different dynamic, not so much about anger, but about people getting distressed and upset and sad. Again, if you want to take this really thoroughly, we want you to go through those same steps of doing the SBAR and then rehearsing the explanation. That concludes the first part of our training on managing difficult conversations. The second part, of course, is about optimizing your approach, and that takes us into enhanced communication using this card model, and in particular, following the platinum rule. So let's get into that bit now.